Welcome back to Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm Ollie Hayes, and today I'm bringing the pre-season preview for the 2025-2026 campaign. So, on the eve of the beginning of our pre-season campaign at Accrington Stanley, this video will hopefully preview what's to come and my thoughts heading into the new season. But as we know, the fixtures have now been confirmed for pre-season, and obviously it consists of a trip to Accrington Stanley, Blackburn Rovers at Ewood Park before jetting off to the United States in the Premier League Summer Series to face Bournemouth, West Ham and Manchester United, before coming back to L5, not L4, I nearly got that wrong earlier, coming back to L5 to the Hill Dickinson Stadium to face Roma on the 9th of August, and that will also consist of a Legends game straight after that fixture. A few tough tests in there, particularly with the likes of Blackburn Rovers. Obviously, they were fighting for playoffs last season, but I think the biggest test will be in the Premier League Summer Series over in the States. I think that's a three-game series, which is really going to test our squad. But today, I'm just here to give you my thoughts heading into the Accrington Stanley game and then also the wider pre-season campaign. But we'll start with the under-21 players because, as we know, the squad at the moment is very thin on the ground. Not a lot of action in the transfer window. Obviously, we know the likes of Tieno Barry has confirmed as a sign-in. Also, Mark Travers is looking like that one's going to get done. And then also there's links here and there, but there's no real concrete deals getting done at the moment. So I think the next couple of games at Accrington Stanley, at Blackburn Rovers, at Ewood Park on Saturday, they will have a heavy focus of under-21 players, with them being largely involved. First of all, we'll start with Doug Lukajankicks. I've probably butchered that name. I feel very bad for butchering that name, but he's quite a decent prospect. He's been rising through the academy quite well. Again, these type of keepers, they do need full first team football, in my opinion, really to nail down a spot and really develop as a player. There's no good being a goalkeeper and sat on the bench. So if he were to get a loan move in the next couple of seasons, I think that'd be fantastic. But also, I think that this pre-season campaign, you look at tomorrow, for example, at Accrington Stanley, it's a real big opportunity for him to get some minutes under his belt and show that he does have the required standard to be an Everton goalkeeper. But also the likes of Reece Welch, Jensen Metcalf, Isaac Heath, Francis Gomez, they're expected to be involved. Again, I've talked about it so many times, but I think under 21 players, they get to a level where they need first team football. They need men's senior football to really blossom and develop. And I think going for these players that I've mentioned there, especially the likes of Reece Welch, who've kind of been struggling for real first team minutes as they get to that age now, I think they do need a loan spell away. And you look at the likes of Martin Sharif as well. He's another player that will probably need a loan spell away to really develop and realise his full potential. But another interesting one, I think, is Braden Graham, because this one, I think, is the complete opposite. I think he needs a little bit of time in-house to develop. Obviously, still young, joined Everton last season after playing in the League of Ireland. I think he's an absolutely top prospect. Saw him in, obviously, the second test event when he played Bolton Wanderers at Hill Dickinson Stadium. Nearly said Goodison Park once again. But yeah, as I said before, Braden Graham, I think he's going to be a fantastic talent in years to come. But I think in-house, his development is probably better for now. Just getting a little bit more acclimatised to the club and maybe in 1-2 seasons' time, send him out on a loan to really develop. But elsewhere from the under-21 players, we'll talk about Tieno Barry, because obviously he's probably the biggest name that's come into the club so far. Obviously, not Carlos Alcaraz, we'll talk about him a little bit later, but Tieno Barry, it's the headline signing that we've all wanted. Bringing in a striker this early on in the window, I think, is fantastic business. I think the Accrington Stanley game is probably going to come a little bit too soon for him. He's maybe a little bit too soon to play in that game, but I think he will want to show his stuff in pre-season. He'll want to show that he can nail down that number 9 spot. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit of a battle between him and Beto at the start of the season, who leads us out as that starting number 9 at the start of the season. I do expect it to be Beto, but don't count out Tieno Barry, because I think he can really stake his claim and really try and nail down this place in pre-season. But again, you look at the likes of Mark Travers, that one looks like it's going to be a deal that's getting done. It gives him a chance really to show what he's doing. I think Jordan Pickford only came back the day before the Accrington Stanley game, so it's kind of a chance for Mark Travers. If you were to feature against Blackburn Rovers or even Accrington Stanley, I think it is really a chance for him to really push Jordan Pickford and show that he isn't here just to be number 2. He's here to try and sort of stake his claim to try and give competition for places for Jordan Pickford. But again, as I said before, Tieno Barry and Mark Travers are the only two really that seem to be coming through the door, but it gives them a chance to bed into the squad early, and them coming into pre-season early obviously is beneficial for them, because they can see their new teammates, see how they react to playing with their new teammates, but also it gives them a good chance to bed in with the squad morale. But also, there's players in-house also that need to impress. You look at the likes of Harry Tyrer, for example. I've mentioned Mark Travers about pushing Jordan Pickford for number 1. Harry Tyrer is one that's had a few very, very positive loan spells away from the club. And, with Mark Travers coming in, will Harry Tyrer need to have another loan to realise that potential? Or can he really push even Mark Travis for the number two shirt? I personally think he needs a loan spell, Harry Tyler, because there's no point in being sat as third choice behind Pickford and behind Mark Travis. I just think that completely stunts his development, and he isn't really, you know, developing as a player in terms of getting first team minutes and getting consistent football. So if he were to get another loan deal and to try and realise that potential even more, I think that'd be a fantastic bit of business. But also you look at the players like James Garner, Timmy Rabunam, two players there that had a little bit of a stop-start season last season. I think that has to be said. James Garner maybe less so. He was more consistent in David Moyes' plans towards the back end of last season. But Timmy Rabunam, I think he really struggled for consistency last season. Showed glimpses that he can be a top player, but if we were to bring in some personnel in midfield and Timmy Rabunam was maybe fourth, even fifth choice in the midfielders lineup, I'd maybe look at loaning him out just to try and get him a little bit of experience in that first team. And the same really goes for Harrison Armstrong because they're two similar players in terms of their development. They need to be playing week in, week out to really get the best out of them. So I'd maybe look to utilise them in pre-season just to see where they're at. I think the Accrington Stanley game will be a good test for that because we can see what their fitness is like coming off the back end of last season. But James Garner as well, I think it's time for him now to start pushing on an Everton shirt. He's getting to that, I like to call it the red zone of his contract, that sort of decision making time where you have to say, are you going to give him a new contract and extend his future at the club, or are you going to look to try and cash in on him? I think we're getting to that stage now with James Garner where a decision has to be made or an upturn in performances has to be coming from him, contributing more assists, contributing more goals to the side. Maybe less so than Harrison Armstrong and Tim Irabun. I think they've got a little bit more credit in the bank in terms of they need to develop a little bit more, but they're the three really I think I'd be looking at the most in pre-season. And also another one at the top of the pitch. As I said before, obviously Tierno Barry coming into the club might not be ready for Accrington. You look at the Accrington game really as a big chance for Yusuf Chamiti to get some minutes and also try and stake his claim in the squad. I think it's a real big opportunity for Yusuf Chamiti this season. But again, we're talking about strength in depth, but also does him being third choice striker, does that stunt his development even more? David Moyes only plays with one striker. We don't play with two up top. So the likelihood, I don't want to speak too soon, but the likelihood, touch wood, that Beto and Tierno Barry were both injured at the same time is pretty slim to none because we only play one striker in David Moyes' system. So Yusuf Chamiti being third choice striker at the club this season, it's a little bit of an obsolete role in my opinion. So again, can he stake his claim to being maybe number two ahead of Tierno Barry? I think Tierno Barry's probably ahead of him in terms of development at the moment, but can Chamiti have a positive pre-season and really stake his claim to be in the squad and in David Moyes' plans for next season? Because again, we're getting towards that stage of Yusuf Chamiti's career now where he really needs to start kicking on, or we need to find him a loan deal where he can get consistent minutes week in, week out for maybe a championship club or a low-end Premier League club or even abroad, just to try and get that development out of him. But it's a big pre-season in my opinion for Yusuf Chamiti. But elsewhere, we've got to talk about Carlos Alcaraz. He was the first man to walk through the door in the summer transfer window this season, obviously making his loan permanent from Flamengo. Can he stake his claim for a permanent spot in the team? I think at the moment, if you're looking at the squad, there's probably only three players, in my opinion, that are nailed on for a starting place. Obviously, injury dependent, nailed on for a starting place at that first game at Leeds United away at Ellen Road. And they, for me, are Jordan Pickford. Four. I'll go with four. Jordan Pickford, Jared Branthwaite, Idrissa Gana and Iliman Ndiaye. I think they're the four complete shoe-ins for the starting lineup at Ellen Road. Carlos Alcaraz is a weird one because we cried out for it to make that loan permanent, but then we're already looking at replacements or competition for places. And I think that's positive. But for me, Carlos Alcaraz, it's a big chance for this preseason for him to nail down a permanent spot and show David Moyes why we spent the money on him, because I think there is a fantastic player in there. We started to see it, didn't we, towards the latter ends of last season. And I think it culminated in that Newcastle United performance away from home on the final day. I thought he was absolutely outstanding that day, obviously getting the winner, getting his goal, and just culminating with an absolutely fantastic performance, which I think we'd seen glimpses of earlier in the season when we initially signed him on loan from Flamengo. We saw glimpses and we saw games where we thought, yeah, you know what, Carlos Alcaraz had a decent game there today, and he sort of affected the game positively, but there wasn't really a standout game where you thought, yeah, he was absolutely amazing today, he was fantastic, but for the Newcastle game. And I think the hard work that he was putting in under David Moyes and maybe showing a little bit of frustration at times why he wasn't in the starting lineup, I think that culminated in a fantastic performance at Newcastle on the final day. So again, if he can keep that momentum going and really take that positive performances into pre-season and into the start of the season, I think he will rapidly become a fan favourite and rapidly become one of David Moyes' trusted players in the starting lineup. But again, he has to take that opportunity now because there's not a lot of competition yet. And I think that's the biggest key word is yet, because I've been a little bit disappointed with the transfer business. I know it's early days. I know we're only at the start of July, but I wanted to see a few more names, as we creep towards that US tour. Maybe wanted to see a couple more names going away with the lads, going away with the squad, to try and sort of state their claim. But at the moment, if you're looking at attacking midfield, it's really only Carlos Alcaraz that's got the attributes to play that week in, week out in the Premier League. So it's a big chance for him in this pre-season to earn his permanent spot. Fingers crossed he can keep that momentum going. But just before we wrap up, there's one more player I wanted to mention. And obviously, I feel like this one is a weird one because Nathan Patterson has had such a difficult run in with Everton in the last few seasons, it has to be said. I think his development is completely stunted. It's been massively halted by previous regimes, and you're looking at David Moyes coming in, maybe that's a fresh start for him, but Jake O'Brien having such a fantastic end to the season at right back kind of stunted it even more. And Nathan Patterson, what does the future hold for Nathan Patterson? I think that is the biggest question going into this season. Do the club move him on? Do the club look to use him as the permanent right back? It's difficult, isn't it? Because Nathan Patterson, he's such a likable fella, and I really want it to work out for him because I think there is a player in there. Obviously, the personality's great. I hear by all accounts, reading online and things like that, that he is a top professional and he conducts himself absolutely fantastically. But do the club look to move him on, or do they, really bed him in and try and get him some consistent minutes this season? Because again, I keep saying it. You're looking at the likes of James Garner, Yusuf Chamiti. We're reaching that red zone now where decisions need to be made about their future. And Nathan Patterson, I really do want it to work out for him, but we've just not seen enough for him. So if we can get that little bit more out of him and really continue his development and see him as a solid Premier League right back option, I think it's a big chance this preseason to give him some minutes and really try and bed him in and look at what David Moyes is doing with him. But again, if he doesn't take that opportunity, what do you do? I feel like you maybe have to move him on there. But again, that's probably one we have to look at towards the back end of preseason as we look towards maybe the end of the transfer window, but also towards the opening game against Leeds at Ellen Road. That's where you sort of have to make those decisions. But again, it's just such a big opportunity for the current players that are in that squad to really try and state their claim, because it's almost a blessing and a curse, really, because yeah, we are so light on the ground that if there were to be an injury crisis, we'd be really, really struggling in terms of fitness and players that are available. But also the players that are here now that have had such a torrid time in recent seasons, it's a complete clean slate for them, and they've got a really good pre-season ahead of them with some real tough tests to really state their claim in this squad. So fingers crossed we can go into it and be positive and also bring a few more names through in the transfer window. That's what I want. But also I'm looking forward to seeing how we get on in the Premier League Summer Series over in the US, and see if we can go toe to toe with the likes of Manchester United, Bournemouth and West Ham. But that is all from me today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about the potential of pre-season. Obviously, just the eve of pre-season now. We're very nearly back, Blues. It's been a sort of long 6 to 8 weeks without Everton. I'm sure you've all been struggling, but I'm looking forward now to getting back into stadiums and getting back to watching the Blues. But that is all from me today. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I'll speak to you soon.